Hi guys, welcome back to another Overthrow Disc Golf video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we are talking about how to brace. This is going to be how to brace on the conceptual side. I'm going to show a little bit in terms of drill slash feel, but that's going to be a follow-up video where we really dive into some of the details in some more drill-based work for the brace. Without further ado, let's get started. So in this video, I'm going to talk about basically the three ways that the brace is being taught in the disc golf coaching scene. I'm going to take a little step back here. The brace is something that took me a while to understand. Coming from tennis, wasn't really talked about that much. It was done, but it really took me a little bit to grasp this concept. Now I teach it day in, day out, and I use two of these methodologies with good success. So I'm going to be trying to do justice to different viewpoints and how they all represent the brace, and you find which one helps you as we move through this. So the first one, and we're just going to get this out of the way, is the brace from Slingshot Disc Golf, probably the biggest proponent of this, where it's more of a back leg move here, where we load up on the back leg and we progressively unload into the brace foot. So he would describe it as we're 100% on this back leg, 0% on this front leg, and then maybe we go 10% onto this front leg and are going to progressively corkscrew this front foot into the ground. So there's going to be more and more of a twisting action on this front foot, driven by this back knee twisting inwards, right? So if I'm 25% twisted inward with this back knee, I've got 25% pressure on this front foot. I've twisted in 25% of the way here. If I go 50% twist, I've gone 50% pressure here. These are just rough numbers. He would say that he's not really a statistician or a scientist, numbers guy, right? But eventually you get to 100% twisted and 100% here. Now, I like some of what Slingshot is doing, but this is not one of those things. Or I've got a couple issues here. First, this would be called squish the bug. It's an old baseball term that they've kind of debunked, and they got a lot of money and a lot of science in that. And again, I already said I'm not going to stand behind my intelligence when presenting these views, so I'm going to defer to the people who have very smart teams of people and millions and millions of dollars invested in this. The other thing is, when you have all your weight on this foot and you're twisting, your knee's gonna take a hit probably, right? You gotta be real careful about that. And then when you see Coach T doing this, he gets in this position where his front knee is bent and twisted forward like this, and he's still got his weight on top of this foot. When I go into the section about more of a vertical type of brace, I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more, but that's no bueno. Not in my opinion anyways. Piece of evidence here that I think is important, we're gonna pull up a clip of David Wiggins that you see here doing a 360. I think it's really important to look at his back foot here. By the time he stomps on that front foot, that left foot actually is sliding behind his body straight forward for the most part. You can actually see the line in the dirt here where his left foot is dragging forward. It is not a twisting motion, right? So the proper move off of this back foot ends up being more of a rolling motion like this, which does turn the knee in a little bit, right? But it's definitely not this. You don't see this kind of 90-degree turn with the pros on that rear leg. So I would stay away from this one. Again, you're responsible for your own mechanics, so up to you. But I think it's pretty safe to say that this back leg is totally de-weighted by the time we're doing anything with the upper body. Now, into the two methods that I would agree with. We're going to talk about more of a horizontal brace and more of a vertical brace. These aren't perfect terms. This is just kind of how I think about it. What we're talking about is how do we apply pressure to the front leg, and where's that pressure coming from? So the horizontal one obviously coming from more in front, and the vertical one coming more downward, right? The important word here is pressure, and both styles agree. So we've got kind of Coach Chris Taylor, who advocates what I'm going to call more of a horizontal brace, where the idea is the foot goes really far out in front of you and it's resisting you trying to go over this front foot. So it's resisting this forward movement, and an emphasis on that versus the other style, which you might know from like sea bass or loop ghost, where they're emphasizing sort of resisting down. Also disc golf spin doctor, same way, resisting down in your weight catching here and then pushing up. What these styles both agree on, though, is that you want as much pressure possible when we're talking about max distance and max efficiency. You want as much pressure as possible on the lead foot. So it's just a matter of how is that happening. That's how I see it anyways. Again, take this with a grain of salt, because I'm not these coaches. Things that they agree on: lots of pressure on this front foot and not on top of this front foot. There's a reason we're talking about pressure and not weight, even though we call it a weight shift. Because when you think about weight, you think about standing on a scale, right? Weighing yourself. That is a very static and just gravity-based pressure. It's stacked vertically, but it's only gonna read whatever your weight is. When we talk about pressure, we're talking about changing the weight on the scale as heavy as a number as we could possibly read. Now, there are a couple ways you could do that, right? The vertical guys would talk kind of about, you could imagine if you had your scale below you and you went like this and you jumped up and went down and then jumped, right? You would have a ton of weight reading there, way more than your body weight, right? And so this is kind of free pressure. By using gravity to drop into that lead leg, you get to generate a lot of ground force, right, or pressure. So, whereas if we put the scale, let's say it was on a wall or it was leaning up against a wall, right, I could also put just as much force on that if I like ran and, you know, kicked off of the wall back the other direction. So that's more that horizontal. Of course, nobody in disc golf is going purely horizontal. It's just more horizontal than perhaps vertical. That's where these views align. Nobody's saying go over the front foot here. Everybody wants your weight to be centered behind your brace, and everybody wants as much pressure, as much stopping power on that front foot as possible. So let's talk about kind of the horizontal one, or the way more forward brace. The poster boy for this has got to be David Wiggins, who Chris Taylor coaches himself. And you know, David Wiggins has been doing this for a long time, since he was very, very young, very athletic. And this clip that we're showing you here, David Wiggins doing his 360 is running up about 15 miles an hour, right? That's not 15 miles an hour jumping, right? There's not a whole lot of up, 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 and this kind of bouncing. There is some bouncing for sure, but 15 miles an hour to go 15 and then stop on a dime, first off, do not try at home. Second off, it's obviously a lot of forward movement. So it's really important, and the coaching here is kind of simple, or the idea is kind of simple. You stick that foot way out in front of your body, and you want to put pressure resisting this way, right? If we think about moves that it might be similar to, we might think of like a cutback in any sport, or a slide. So get your socks on, find a hardwood floor or linoleum or whatever this crap's called, and get ready. So this, I think, is probably the most helpful illustration, where we just slide across the floor, right? You're trying to avoid what I just did, which is go over the top here, right? If your foot's not far out enough and you don't resist the ground enough, you go over the top of that leg. And if you hang too far back, you never get off this back leg, right? And you're unbalanced. So there's this kind of seesaw act that we got to work through and find good balance as we slide, right? And as you slide, you can feel that this back leg is just there for the ride. It's obviously not pushing as we slide. It's very, very similar. The only difference perhaps is that we come in, and this is the hard part, is we come in a little more backwards. in our posture here.
Hey guys, taking a quick break from this brace video to thank you, those who watch our videos, those who are our patrons, those who shop at our online store. We've been very blessed to do this for a living, and a huge part of that, massive part of that, is you guys. And of course, I know it's an exchange. We work hard. I'm not saying that we don't, but you guys show up. So people out there like you doing things like that just blows my mind. Part of the reason we can do our patron coaching sessions in here, or the whole reason this shop even exists with all these discs, which for us is just a lot. The reason I'm able to bring my studio, my video production in this room is because you guys have made it possible. So that's it. Just wanted to say thank you. And for those who will continue to support us, thank you. For those who have supported us, thank you. And for those of you who will support us at some point, thank you. Now back to the video.
Now this cue, again, very simple. You need some flexibility to do this at a higher level where you got to really get that foot out in front of you. If you can think of it this way, might be the best way. If you just kind of like, okay, I got to stop. I got to make sure I resist and actually put pressure going the opposite direction. I got it, right? Most of us aren't gonna got it. So I found success with some students with the other method as well. Now this method is what I'm gonna call more of the vertical brace. The vertical brace has almost two parts, you might say. We kind of go up here and then we drop into this front foot, and so we have our initial pressure go down into the foot, and now we're kind of resisting this. Sometimes they call this like sitting in a chair. Okay, so we have this front leg catch all of our weight, and then we're resisting upward to make sure we don't just fall into the ground, right? So we kind of stop and plant, and we drive all the weight into the heel, and now we're in this kind of sitting position, or the I've got to go potty stance. And then as our hands start moving through and as our hands start passing, we start pressing up, right? And that press up, I mentioned Slingshot's method earlier, where you've got this full force here in the twisting, right? Well, there's this moment where when you go on a scale and you go boom and you jump up, you have that pressure there for an instant, right? But it's not like you're down and you've got all of your weight here and then you're trying to twist against it. That's not really healthy for the knee, like we mentioned, right? So instead we drop in and then we press up against the ground, and now this foot is kind of de-weighting. It's almost as if we're jumping off of this foot to where there's less pressure. So by the time this starts twisting, there's already less weight on it, where these toes can come up nice and easy and pivot out, right? Versus bearing down all our weight and then trying to twist on this knee. That's why it's a bit healthier. There are a couple analogies for this. One that I'm absolutely in love with came from a student of mine who owns a golf simulator business. And he's got a couple pros, and I was telling him about this, like, yeah, you kind of press up, and he's like, oh, like tossing a bucket of water. And I was like, exactly. So his pros were teaching that. I just so happen, by no matter of chance, to have a bucket. Right, so I want you to imagine that you're throwing a bucket of water on somebody, okay? You don't have to have a bucket, but you would grab it with two hands, right? Do not think about the disc golf throw. I would naturally grab a bucket like this with my right hand on bottom and throw it this way, right? So if you're gonna throw a bucket of water straight forward on somebody and splash them as hard as you can, do that, and then I want you to freeze once you get here, okay? So once you get here with both hands. So if we come in with a bucket of water, right, notice that your lead hip naturally kind of clears out of the way. This is that pressing up motion, right? If we don't press up and we just go boom into this leg, now we go with the water and it kind of like dribbles out of the bucket instead of really slinging it, right? The goal is for the water to go, but not for us to go, or not for the bucket to go. So we naturally kind of push back off of this and press this leg out. Sorry, let me move that. We kind of naturally press this leg out in order to keep us behind the bucket. And then also we kind of naturally come in bent with the leg because we don't want to be straight here, right? If we're totally straight when we come here, the bucket's going straight down. So there needs to be this kind of redirect here, and then we press out to stay behind our front leg. That's clearing the hip, and that's pushing up out of the brace. The only thing that you might have done weird is had your front foot kind of open. So the difference is with the disc golf throws, we have our front foot kind of perpendicular or even a little bit back, and then we clear, right? So that's my favorite analogy for this at the moment. The important thing is that we stay behind this leg, and this pressing out, we don't have to press the knee totally straight, right? It's just to keep us behind here, and we don't, just like we don't want to jerk our elbow straight in the throw, we don't want to pop this knee straight in some awkward way. It's very natural when we do it with a bucket of water, but if we're trying to like pop it straight there, you're not going to have an efficient brace, and it's going to look and feel weird and potentially dangerous. So it can stay bent, and you can have a quality brace. If you want to look at somebody who does this, we've got that Drew slow-mo where you can see he kind of drops here. So if we draw a line from the top of his head, he kind of is dropping into this last step, and then he kind of pops up, and his leg gets straighter than probably any of ours need to get. But he's got that very like down and then up form in that kind of redirect vertical form. So he's good to look at for that. Or Garrett Girthy. Yeah, you could look at Girthy easy. Like I said, I've used the last two methods with good success, and I just kind of look depending on what the student naturally does. If I got someone really flexible, really young, and they can just stick that foot out there and stay behind it, I kind of go for that one. If they're a little bit older, maybe their flexibility's not there, they're a little bit more heavy set, we're probably going to use that gravity assisted brace moving forward. So if you don't know which one you should be using, well, guess or get with coach. So our Patreon's in the link in the description below. I'm glad we finally did this video. It's been a monster in my mind forever, y'all. I've done a lot of work to get to those explanations.
Get to those. Look at them. Look at those explanations.
Sweet. All right. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.